Hello, this is Matthew Chan.
And I'm Tony Centavo.
We welcome you to the new episode of TurnKey Publishing. Now, prior to us coming on camera, I thought I had a game plan for what this episode was going to be, but unfortunately, my co-host has derailed me with a darn good idea.
Well, that's what I'm here for. Good ideas, right?
Right. He made a compelling case that what I was going to present was probably not going to be as inspiring as his idea. So I kind of went with it. So, Tony, since it was your idea, I turn over the main hosting responsibilities to you over this episode. So there you go.
Well, let me get this started. In as much as we were discussing what is to come, and he is going to share some of these things, I was saying that writing and publishing are related, but they're not the same thing. And most people's challenge is to start writing. And so what I asked Matthew to do, because I think it is very important to establish the human connection with this pursuit that we're engaging in at the start, is to ask him, Matthew, how did you start writing? What challenges did you have to even get started, and then how did you overcome those to carry it all the way to where you've obviously mastered even the art of publishing multiple titles at this point?
Well, I don't think it was any one factor, but I will outline some of the contributing factors. Okay. Number one, as we discussed in the last episode, that motivation is a big thing. Right. You have to be motivated. Okay, that's issue number one. Number two, in the course of being in the corporate world and in business, I just wrote little letters and along the way. So I think many of us in the white collar world do some degree of writing, if nothing else, in emails, correct?
Right, yes.
And so, you're forced to do some writing. So I had those already going for me. So really, the way I looked at a book was I chunked it down. It's just, all it is a series of sentences and paragraphs. I mean, we all write sentences. We've all written paragraphs.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The only difference is that in a book, traditionally you have to write a lot more.
It's a compilation.
It is a compilation. Right. Mm-hmm. In fact, the way my first book started, The Intrepid Way, was really a series of articles on various subjects, and they were not even necessarily connected subjects.
Really?
It was only after the fact that I decided I want the book, and I kind of knew what the underlying theme was, which was entrepreneurship, that I actually put the articles, sorted them out. I was literally on the floor. You can envision me crawling on the floor,
right.
Okay, with little stacks of paper like this, and I put a stack here, and these were just all articles. I was like, okay, this would make sense to be in this one chapter, and this would, I put all the articles that had things in common and kind of boiled it down to a few chapters.
So that's
the short version. Yeah, that's really the short version.
Okay.
I just started with little articles.
All right.
But I will also say I didn't put the pressure on myself to make sure I was always grammatically or punctuationally correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I wasn't going to second guess myself every time. It was more important just to get the text out.
Okay. All right. So the finished product, you began with a general direction, but you didn't get so caught up in all the finesse stuff that it got in the way of getting to,
which winds up a lot of people.
Right.
I had to chunk it down, and I think you might be able to relate to that. I mean, you view a process, and it's this big intimidating process, but sometimes to make it more manageable, you got to break it down into little steps.
That's true. And even from the standpoint of my own, I've written a lot of stuff, and from the standpoint of even.
You're a good writer.
Well, thank you. It's like whether you stop, it's like it's flowing from your brain, but then you got to turn it into chapters. So if you start thinking of, okay, what am I going to talk about? It's almost like having a discussion, having talking points. Okay, what am I going to talk about at each increment of this process? Then relaxing, and there are just so many tools nowadays to help get that composed and refined that, as he's saying, don't get intimidated by getting started. Get started. I mean, and let me make this other point. Now, I commented in the first episode that my mother was an English teacher, which has its pluses and minuses, but from the standpoint of the old sentence outline type of thing, it doesn't even have to be that formal. Like, where do I want to say in the beginning? It could just be a little blurb,
Yes.
just to kind of organize your thoughts. And then once you've got something started, it's almost like once you let water go over, gravity's going to take it from there. I think that made a lot of sense for people.
Well, one of the challenges that I've heard a lot of people have is how do they get started? They want to start with once upon a time. And and after once upon a time,
Mm-hmm.
people get really stuck, and because they're putting their pressure that they have to write in a linear format.
Okay.
And what I mean by linear format means sequential. Do you know that in movies it is actually quite common that they film the sequences out of order? They
Really?
don't actually, so when we watch a 2-hour movie,
Mm-hmm.
they don't film it in that order. They could very well start in the middle or at the end or whatever. They do whatever is practical for them,
Okay.
to get the end result, and they chunk it down. So in the book process, people think that they have to start with the introduction in chapter 1. That's not true. Many times I start right in the middle because I don't want that pressure.
Okay.
I don't know. Sometimes I really don't know how I'm going to start off the book until the majority of it starts fleshing out. I'll jump right in the middle. I will jump wherever's comfortable, and I will write till I'm stuck, and then I'll just hit another topic, which could be in the beginning or the end. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Because I find that a lot of people have a challenge of they got a lot of thoughts, but they can't get it down on paper.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because they impose all these limitations. They got to write it correctly, it's got to be orderly,
Yeah,
it's got to be
that's the
pretty.
thing I'm
and
saying.
neat.
Take the ideas and just dump them, and then
It's
go
a brain
back
dump.
and fill them out and
Exactly.
organize them. Okay. Okay.
Exactly. That's what I call it. It's really a brain dump.
Uh-huh.
But it does require a different way because most of the time we're not allowed to brain dump.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in emails. You could get yourself in trouble. We're trained not to do a brain dump.
Mm-hmm.
We're trained to try to order your thoughts.
In traditional education, if you have a test or an essay or something, you've got to
That's right.
do all that stuff and even reports. But now with editing, you can always go back and
That's right. You're doing it in the
rearrange.
comfort of your
Okay.
home.
Yeah.
Now, let me qualify this, okay? The writing that I'm talking about is business writing. I'm not talking about writing a novel now or a short story. Now, it doesn't mean that I may get it into me to write a novel, but I suspect that if I ever took on a novel, I would probably still approach it a very similar way. I wouldn't put the pressure of, what the opening scene was. I mean, there would probably be scenes and stories and dialogue I would want to get in there for sure,
Right.
and then just write things around the core thing.
okay.
But that's just me. I'm a little bit chaotic that way.
Well, yeah, organic. Well, now, what are some of the key principles that would be, I guess, identifiable in your mind as you think about turnkey publishing? When you call it turnkey publishing, what are some of those?
Well, that's a great question, Tony. First of all, when I look at the turnkey publishing, and although a great deal of focus is on book publishing, really publishing is not just book publishing. It's become ebook publishing, it's become audio publishing. Okay, when I say audio publishing, I'm not just talking about CDs where you hire a narrator and read the words of the book.
Okay.
Which is what a lot of people associate. People in the traditional publishing world, they basically say, well, if you're in audio publishing, it's basically someone reading the book, and that's just very limited thinking. That's very, very limited
Right.
thinking. As you were part of a couple of my programs, and that's not what we were doing.
True, that's right.
I mean, we had a recording session. We sort of planned what we were going to talk about and make sure it was full of information and content, but we're not reading from a script.
That's true.
And the reason why we didn't want to do that is because we wanted to engage our audience. We didn't want to bore them to tears. We wanted we wanted them to learn by being part of the conversation.
And that's what it was like. It was conversational.
It was, and it was, it was a three-way conversation. And, the program turned out well. So I view publishing as a means of getting your thoughts and ideas from your mind into some sort of tangible format. Well, even the tangible format's sort of going away. The tangible formats at the time were traditional books and CDs, but now, we're starting to have ebooks
That's true.
and MP3s.
Yeah, with
and
your Kindle and your iPod.
Yes, so that, in a broader sense, turnkey publishing encompasses that. but the principle is still the same. It's about getting your ideas and thoughts down to some sort of medium.
And I think that that is very important as we continue to see the effect of technology, because iPods branding went to the theme of 1,000 songs in your pocket. Now with these Kindles and things like that, even smartphones, you have 1,000 books in your pocket.
Absolutely, you got that right.
So the tangible of a bound book, I mean, just think 15 years from now, kids probably won't even know what a bound book is. I mean, they'll see them in the museum or something, because, you know, everything will be going more digital format.
You know, this may sound a little bit strange, but just to set the record straight, I really still like my old-fashioned books.
Is that right?
I know it's not ecologically, healthy.
All the trees.
Right. We still got to mow down those trees. I mean, if I was really thinking more about, the ecology of the thing, I really should make a faster move into ebooks. But as a consumer, I still love my books. But having said that, I would be unwise to not acknowledge the trends of ebooks and the media format, and that's just the way it is today. So that's to answer your question as far as at least one of the guiding principles of the turnkey publishing.
Okay. What are some of the others?
This one offends quite a few people in traditional publishing.
All right. Now make sure all the children leave the room.
I view turnkey publishing, again, I'm a businessman,
right,
and a business owner. So, I'm not a novelist or whatever, or a screenplay writer or anything like that. But for me, turnkey publishing is about the business side first. The art form is second. And that makes a lot of people cringe. People say, well, the quality of your writing matters and this and that. And my contention is, if you find the right editor or proofreader, they can clean up any bad writing you have.
Okay.
But you have to have the clarity of thoughts. You have to be able to put it down, and you can have somebody else do it. And what I mean by business side doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like monetarily profitable. I mean, there is a certain, especially as you all know, I mean, you're working on your first book.
Right.
Having that very first book really pushes you over a threshold in terms of social status, that you become an author. And so so as far as I was concerned, I wanted the author title.
Okay.
That was a driving force. Now, obviously, it's not such a driving force for me anymore because I have a number of titles. So that's not a driving force. But in the beginning, I was very business-minded, and I needed to have that author title because it was going to boost my personal credentials.
Okay.
And of course, profitability did matter and all that.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and that's probably not a point that most people will consider as they're going into the writing. With those, what are some of the things that, I guess we'll call them principles, but at the same time are part of the process of taking the normal mode of publishing apart and turning it on its head and using the turnkey approach that you've so successfully repeated in terms of your own products?
Well, given that we have a certain amount, a limited amount of time on this episode, it actually ties into some of the principles that, the how-tos is really influenced by the principles. And if you'll just allow me to share a couple of them.
Go ahead.
Like, for example, being your authentic self. That's part of turnkey publishing. And the reason why I make that as a guiding principle, being your authentic self, means that it's far easier to make this happen, if you're trying to be yourself.
Right.
In other words, like, as you write your book, you don't want to necessarily take the tone of a Matthew Chan or the style. Because no one really is better qualified to be Tony Centavo than Tony Centavo.
That's true.
You have your own way of wording, you have your own way of thinking, you have your own way of being. The essence of who you are should not change as you go to the book.
Okay.
I think if you're trying to be me, then you second guess yourself all the time.
All right.
I think that makes it tough. Okay?
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Well, I certainly agree with it, and from the standpoint of even trying to portray, I would be a poor actor.
Well, that's the thing.
Unless I was portraying a character who was very similar in personality. So from the standpoint of being a writer, we all think just like our fingerprints. We could take the same description of of an ink pen, and you would describe it differently. Now, we would probably agree that it's black, got silver, it's got point, it's linear, but we would find our own words. Maybe some of the adjectives we would select would be different. So as you said, that unique, almost genetically encoded way of conveying my ideas of the world should be able to flow naturally, and that will certainly make it easier to compose.
Right, because you know how you think, you know how you react and all that. And don't try to be somebody else.
Another thing on that is there are other people, it's almost like a frequency. Some people tune into that frequency, and some people wouldn't tune into it. So from the standpoint, especially if you're going to take the turnkey approach and have multiple copies or multiple products that come out under the same theme, you kind of get a followership, like Stephen King pumped out how many zillions of books he is. But there's a certain uniqueness to his style that people gravitate in it, and so I was certain you can't compete, you can't keep repeating a non-authentic personality.
Well, and the thing about it is with the internet nowadays, and people have just become more savvy. I mean, the people's BS detector is much higher. Okay, and you want to talk about the business side. People will sniff out the BS.
Okay.
Yeah. If you try to put up, so trying to be somebody else besides yourself really hurts in the marketing, even in the finished product.
Okay.
They're going to say, hey, I read this book, but it sure doesn't sound like it came from
right,
this guy.
Yeah.
You made a comment to me how my books kind of sound like me. You can envision me saying these words out loud because I am being.
That is absolutely.
And it made it very easy. Okay. So another thing that I think is really important in turnkey publishing, again, this is from a business writing point of view, is you want to take a position, a perspective or approach. You want to own it.
Okay.
I think what happens with a lot of people is if you're trying to write it wishy-washy, you're trying to accommodate everybody and trying to be politically correct, you wander. You get diffused, whereas you're a lot more focused if you take a particular position.
Or you're not advocating being controversial, but be clear as to when you say take a position.
What I mean by take a position or take a perspective.
Or give an example, maybe.
Right. Well, for example, in the Turnkey Publishing series, I don't write about all the different ways that you can produce a book or publish a book. I just simply share the way I do it.
Okay.
It's my system, and it's what works for me.
Okay.
And now it doesn't mean that I won't discuss auxiliary issues surrounding it, why I made certain choices, but I don't try to say, hey, look, how to write a book is, and how to publish a book that it will encompass screenplays or novels or poetry books and all that stuff. I make it very, very clear, like that the turnkey publishing is really geared towards entrepreneurs and small business owners.
Okay.
They want to get published and they want to get it done fast and they want to make it profitable.
Okay.
I make no bones about it, and I say, look, this is the way I do it.
So it's like
take
defining
the pieces that work for you and discard the stuff that you don't like.
Okay, so it's pretty much like defining a niche. In a sense, when I say niche, this is the way I do it. So if you like it, good. If you don't like it, there are other ways I acknowledge they
That's
exist.
right.
I'm not expressing those. I'm not even advocating those. I'm advocating this.
Right.
Okay.
Because this is what I've done.
Right.
And this is what works for me,
And
and I can back it up.
And you're talking actual, not theoretical.
That's exactly it. And it makes the writing process very simple in my mind because there's a clarity of thought. I'm not trying to figure out how this guy produced a book or that guy published a book. I just know what I did, and I know it well.
Okay. So it's not a universal discussion. Yeah. It worked. In the military, we used to say, if one guy made it through a minefield, so there's a muddy ground area. If he made it, now whose footsteps are you going to step in? Are you going to step over where there are no footprints, or are you going to follow the ones that made it through? So the point is, you've done this, you've done it multiple times, and now you're talking about it from your actual experiences, which has a lot of credibility to it. Probably.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, even from the standpoint, people might assume credibility as someone is published, but then to actually say, "Here's what I did," very didactically, is different from
Multiple
somebody talking,
times.
generically.
Yeah.
So I certainly have to commend you on that.
So, and I think that, and I know there are books that they spread themselves so thin. They're trying to cover every different way you can do it. And for me, that's just not my style. I need the clarity and focus to get this thing done. Because I'm not trying to write an encyclopedia here. I'm not trying to an end-all be-all. I'm writing a very focused book. And, the one thing I do want to clarify is, as you know, I've sort of adopted the word turnkey as part of my, branding.
Right.
Turnkey publishing, turnkey investing.
Yes.
Okay, but turnkey does not mean brainless. Allow me to clarify that. Okay, you have turnkey systems in business like franchise, but it doesn't mean that you have to be brainless about it. There are still decisions that have to be made. It is a system that is out there, but you get to choose what to incorporate, or you get to adapt and modify.
So this is like a roadmap approach to where, I'll tell you where the markers and the directions are, but you still choose which car you're going to drive, what speed you're going to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
We could have the same identical car going to the same identical destination, but you're going to have your own way of driving.
Yeah.
That's really the bottom line, as long as you get there. When we say, hey, we're going to go and at so-and-so's house for a party, we don't tell them, well, you got to, turn on your blinkers when you get to this thing. We don't tell. We just say, look, this is the address. Let's just get there by 5 o'clock. And that's the way I kind of pointed out.
It's more directions versus recipe.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is a recipe you can follow if you want to follow verbatim, but it's designed for you to adapt it, because I don't have it in my head that my system is the best system, but it is the best system for me.
Yes.
So there you go. All right.
What's another?
Let's see here. I think that people should embrace simplicity. Okay? And unfortunately, the traditional publishing industry has brainwashed most people into thinking that this has to be a complex process.
Okay.
Now, we're gonna, as you had said at the opening of the episode, we weren't going to talk about the how-tos.
Yeah. Right.
Well, people think that there's so many different steps to getting this thing published. Get to the end product. For example, like the typesetting. People say, well, gosh, all these letters, they look so nice, and the fonts and all that stuff. And now I personally know how to do this because I made it my business to learn it. But I didn't learn it from ground zero. I learned it by basically hiring a professional typesetter, and she did it to me, but I just kind of I took what she did and I modified it.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I learned it.
So once you got a model, you just on your own started replicating the model.
Well, I tweaked it. But there were things I didn't agree with. There were things that I wanted to, that was a departure from what she did. So I simply built it, tweaked it, and it's kind of like my methodology of laying things out in the way it should look. But so a lot of people think that, wow, they've got to do it. Now, the reason why I've taken it internally is so that I can, improve the budget, so I don't have to hire it out. But in the beginning, for most people, they're not going to want to do the typesetting. I would not recommend it. The easiest thing to do is find somebody to do it.
Right.
And that's really the easiest step. So instead of getting lost in the technical details, just say, hey, look, typesetting needs to get done. Let's find someone to get it done.
So when you say simplicity, you're saying do that only which you can do well and do easily, and then basically hire experts to get the other things accomplished.
That's right. Now, I'm a little bit guilty of this, Okay. I freely admit that sometimes I'm almost too hands-on, because I am a person that when I get into a process, I want to learn it in and out. And I learn it in and out not so much so I can do it forever. I just want to be very fluent. I can be conversant in it.
That makes sense, though. If it's the first time through and you're learning, then when you're delegating, you know what standards, expectations, because if all you do is give somebody something to do and they hand it back, you think that's the way it, or that's the best way it can be done, or that's the only way it's done. And I'm even like that with, work on properties, repairs. I like to watch somebody do it, so at least I can learn how to do it. So at least if they charge me this much, if I'm going to have somebody else do it, I know what goes into it.
Well,
so
that's
it's worth
that's the
money.
same principle.
Yeah.
It's more to be
Being able to
knowledgeable.
define the value of the effort.
Right.
Okay.
Now, for first timers, I don't really recommend that. I mean, I think they have a lot going against them in getting their first product out. I do, so then, for them to try to get past the writing and all the different stages is already challenging enough. And so your first book will probably be more expensive because you're going to be hiring a lot of the processes out in the beginning.
What you're saying, once you have the finished product, kind of go back and, what do they call it, reverse engineer?
Well, yeah,
in a
when you
sense.
go back to your second title, because
Okay,
I don't
yeah.
assume, everyone says, well, I mean, there's a saying that everyone has a book in them.
Uh-huh.
Well, I kind of modify. I think most people have several books in them.
Right. Mm-mm.
I mean, we're on this earth for presumably at least 70 years,
Uh-huh.
of which 50 of them were in our adult years. So I have to believe we've got more to say in life
And just one.
than one book.
Okay.
So anyway, now another guiding principle that I think people forget and is that they forget the mission. Now, you've been in the military.
Right.
So when I use the word mission, what does that convey to you?
We're here to get done within a certain time frame with certain outcomes.
That's right.
Yes.
I mean, yes, there may be a lot of auxiliary tasks you may get put off, but let's never forget the mission.
Right. In fact, we used to say that the operations plan may change from the time we get started, but the mission never changes. If it's to take this hill, then we may have supposed to come up the left side, but we might wind up on the right side, but take the hill.
Right.
Okay.
The bottom line is you want that hill.
Achieve the objective.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, and I think a lot of people get pulled off mission. And the problem with books is because, in the writing process is people keep wanting to add things. They want to keep changing things.
Okay.
And let me tell you, I definitely fall into that trap, especially when I was trying to write the TurnKey Publishing series. You're talking about a fast-moving field.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're trying to write about a fast-moving field, it is tough to fight the resistance, to keep sliding more and more in there because you're
Okay.
trying to be current. But at some point, you got to cut it off. You got to cut it off, and you got to release it, even if it has some warts or if it's partially incomplete.
Like in the military, I was an intelligence officer. You have to do a report, but you have an information cutoff date. So as of this date, here's what we know.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're saying, when you have things that are continually evolving within the time frame of doing the book, new technology may have come out, new ways of doing things. So
Yes.
yeah, I think that's very important. And even you can probably speak to it from the standpoint of, I just thought of something, that you want to add.
Oh, I
in,
know.
you
That happens a lot. And I'm
Okay.
sure that's going to probably happen to you as you work towards the end of the book.
Mhm.
And at some point, you're going to have to say, this is good enough. And that's very, very difficult for some people.
Is that right?
It's very, very difficult. I mean, maybe it won't be for you because you came from the military, you understand the concept of mission. But, there are other people, they want to keep going and going, and they just can never stop
Mhm.
because it's never complete.
Well, let me
And-
ask this question, which may relate to this, but in terms of, and I know you'll probably talk about the numbers of pages and things in the book, but
Mhm.
I guess most people, and I can even say this as I'm imagining finishing mine, you want to see certain, the book to be so big,
You mean size does matter?
Yeah. So, it's almost like I got to come up with something else to put in there just to make it bigger, but, that might be off mission, but I think it still could relate to, with a complete set of ideas, not necessarily the physical manifestation. I want a book that's 3 inches thick or 2.5 or, anyway.
There are tricks of the trade,
Okay.
and what I would say to you, Tony, is that I am more than happy to share some of the tricks of the trade,
Mhm.
but it'll probably be a little bit beyond the scope of this
Gotcha,
episode.
okay.
Okay, and there's a couple last quick ones that I do want to get out there before we wrap up this episode. Number one, stop trying to be perfect. Okay, I mean, people are trying to make it absolutely flawless and all that stuff. And I'm not saying you shouldn't strive for excellence. Okay, you should strive for excellence, but excellence does not mean 100% perfection.
Mhm.
Because even the best books from traditional publishers still have mistakes. Inevitably, you will catch something.
Right.
I almost always catch something, a mistake, even despite the fact that however many people reviewed the manuscript and edited and proofread it. It's just it's just an unforgiving process. I mean, there are bound to be things to come up. So you need to forget the perfection. And the last thing is, I think very, very important, is seeking out kindred spirits.
Okay. Yes, I totally agree.
I mean, it's a real tough one. And what I'm getting at is, like you, writing a book. How many people in your life really want to write a book? I can't imagine there are too many,
I
right?
haven't talked to very many.
Right.
I've got the few I mentioned. But,
So if you want the motivation and the skills and all that to get done, you have to seek out sort of a support group.
True. That's very, very true.
And fortunately, we're friends, so we can talk about it at any time, really. But those of you who are viewing it, you may find this to be a lonely road, because and what I would say to you is, there's a lot of people on the internet going through the same journey. You will not be alone.
Yeah. So look for blogs and things like that where.
Or maybe talk with somebody else that maybe not necessarily partner up, but somebody that's going through a similar process as you.
Okay.
And they want to do the book, and they can kind of sort of share their experiences as they go through the process.
And this
Sort of like a workout partner.
Right.
You hear that.
Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking about the number of people who I've talked to about writing a book who have said, yeah, I want to write one too, but then when it comes down to people who have actually even started writing one, or have actually written one, those are probably one out of 1,000 who are actually engaged in the process, versus almost everybody say, yeah, I want to write a book. I mean, as you said, everybody's got a book in them. So just the notion of it is going to evoke a response, but then to find someone, as you said, a workout partner, January 1st or 2nd. The gyms are packed. By this time, I go to the gym a lot. But it's kind of winnow back down to those dedicated few. You may have added one new familiar face that you see every day or every time you go. But yeah, that is important, because somebody, I think, as has been a challenge with me, and as much as we're friends, the accountability, because he razzes me from time to time, where is the book in the process? And it is creative work, it is intellectual, and life still happens around you, unless you do like, Thoreau, and go off and to a pond and just collect.
Well,
your thoughts.
I haven't actually threatened you to end a friendship. Maybe that'll work. I won't be friends with you anymore if you don't finish that book.
Viewers, if you don't see me on the show again, I have been fired, okay?
No, the fact of the matter is, I don't know if I want to say that. I mean, I think I would probably stand to lose more than having that book out.
But I want to get the book out, so I'll take that as a veiled threat, if nothing else.
Okay, well, thank you for spending your time with us in this episode of TurnKey Publishing, and we hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you'll be back to see us in our next episode. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.